Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Anita Anand bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Government makes e-visa mandatory for Afghan citizens travelling to India. India to brief floor leaders of political parties on present situation in Afghanistan on Thursday. Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs approves FDI proposal of 15,000 crore rupees investment by Anchorage Infrastructure Investment Holdings Limited. India's Chief of Defence Staff, Mr. Rawat, holds talks with US Commander of Indo-Pacific Command on bilateral defence cooperation. Cumulative COVID-19 vaccination coverage in India crosses 60 crore mark. And in cricket, India bowled out for 78 runs by England in first innings on day one of the third test at Leeds. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar will brief floor leaders of political parties on the present situation in Afghanistan on Thursday at Parliament House Annex in New Delhi. The minister said in a tweet that in view of developments in Afghanistan, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has instructed that he briefs floor leaders of political parties. Over 600 people have been evacuated from Afghanistan till now. India evacuated the people on several flights from Kabul, Dushanbe and Doha. The mission to evacuate people from Kabul has been named as Operation Devi Shakti. Indian External Affairs Ministry has said that owing to the prevailing security situation in Afghanistan and streamlining of the visa process by introduction of the e-emergency ex-MISC visa, all Afghan nationals must now travel to India only on e-visa. It said that keeping in view some reports that certain passports of Afghan nationals have been misplaced, previously issued visas to all Afghan nationals who are presently not in India stand invalidated with immediate effect. Afghan nationals wishing to travel to India may apply for e-visa at www.indianvisaonline.gov.in. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Minister also spoke to the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab on Wednesday on prevailing situation in Afghanistan. Dr. Jaishankar also spoke to Saudi MOS for Foreign Affairs Adel Al-Zubair and discussed regional and multilateral issues. He welcomed relaxation of COVID restrictions on travel. World Bank has halted all financial assistance for projects to Afghanistan. The move comes in the wake of the Taliban assuming power in the country. The World Bank spokesperson said in Washington that the agency paused disbursements in its operation in Afghanistan and is closely monitoring and assessing the situation in line with its internal policies and procedures. The World Bank will continue to consult closely with the international community and development partners in this direction. Concerns have also been raised as regards the impact on the country's development prospects, especially for women.
Tajikistan President Emomali Rahmon on Wednesday strongly condemned the Taliban for absconding the previous promises to form the interim government with the broad participation of other political forces in the country. According to the state media, Mr. Rahmon said Tajikistan denounced all forms of lawlessness, murder, looting and persecution of Afghan people, especially Tajik, Uzbeks and other national minorities. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on reactions of global communities on situation in Afghanistan. In conversation are Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Good evening. 10 days after the capture of Kabul by the Taliban, there is still no clarity on the shape of any government of that beleaguered country, nor any sense of how the group, designated still as a terrorist organization by the United Nations, will govern Afghanistan. Leaders of the G7 met virtually in an emergency session on Tuesday to try and formulate a common policy on how they plan to tackle the situation going ahead. To explain some of these complex issues facing Afghanistan and the region, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash joins us and will walk us through the possible scenarios. Ambassador Prakash, while expressing their grave concern at events in Afghanistan, the G7 leaders reiterated that Afghanistan must never again become a safe haven for terrorism, nor a source of terrorist attacks on others. Does that statement provide you with any sense of security or commitment?
Oh, very much. I am feeling so secure, and the Taliban is shivering in its boots because of this very strong verbal missile from G7. Let's get real, Nilova. G7 has the day the US decided, or rather on the 29th of February 2020, when the US said, we are leaving Afghanistan on the 31st of May 2021, they lost it. Because that is the day when the Taliban smelled victory. And after that, everything was compounded by the hasty 9th of August they pulled out, and within 6-7 days, the Taliban was in Kabul. Shows it all. And now the US has been asking Taliban support in getting its citizens out of Afghanistan. So clearly, Western world, G7, the US are on the back foot. And these are nothing but verbal missiles which are not going to have much of an influence on the Taliban.
Yesterday at this meeting, US President Joe Biden also did not seek to extend the timeline for the withdrawal of troops beyond August 31st. So how do you think the situation is now going to pan out from September the 1st onwards? Will there be more chaos?
I think it was more of a play of words. If you were to read between the lines, there have been, and it was mentioned that the US and Taliban are on regular contact. Bill Burns was there to meet Mullah Baradar yesterday. So what would they have spoken of? The immediate thing that they would have spoken of is the need of Taliban's support, or at least that they should not obstruct the safe evacuation of the Americans and the Europeans. I think that is the primary requirement at the moment, but there would be some kind of an arrangement, because since the Doha Accord, the American forces have not been attacked. And they would be something like this, that let our people go out and we will see what we can do. We will not impose sanctions and we will try to work with the Taliban. It has not been said, but this is what I see happening. And also, they have said that, look, they will do what it takes to get people out. They are also talking of a contingency planning. They are also talking of an expectation of smooth evacuation. So what does contingency planning mean? It means that if they have to stay on, they will. Taliban cannot, of course, say upfront that, yes, please, Mr. US, stay on as long as you like. Remember, the first deal was that by the 31st of May, the Americans will pull out. They did not. Taliban extended it. So realistically speaking, till the last American is pulled out, the Americans will have no choice but to extend their mission.
Now, all of this seems to point to the fact very clearly that the Americans made this pact with the devil, as it considered the Taliban the devil, given that they're still a terrorist entity. But how, in all conscience, can the United States actually go ahead and do something like this? I mean, we have been speaking continuously to the United States and our sort of partners in the G7. How do you allow the sovereign country to speak to a terrorist organization and negotiate over and above a government of that country?
Well, conscience is a word which sounds very nice, just as President Biden has been speaking of democracy, human rights, respect for women, freedom of religion, etc. Very good. But what has been done on ground is that you have left the women and children, the most vulnerable section of the Afghan society, to fend for themselves. So at the end of the day, it is just national interests. And if you are a major power as the US is, you will pursue your national interests and you will then try to construct a narrative where you will try to show that it has been done in the favor of humanity. Don't we all remember when the spokesperson of the Foreign Office, was it, or the State Department, said that Americans getting vaccinated is in the global interest. So that is how reality is, and we have to face it.
Now, have we been sort of shoring up our own national interest in terms of engaging perhaps at some kind of back channel level with the Taliban? I mean, how are we proposing to take our national interest forward at this point of time?
Let us first define our national interest, because there is a little bit of ambiguity. Many people say that we have made a $3 billion investment. I would say that no, it's not an investment. Investment means returns. Well, if you want returns, we have got returns in terms of the goodwill that it has generated in Afghanistan. But this is developmental assistance as a grant that we have provided to the people of Afghanistan. And I don't think that Taliban will cut its nose to spite the face. Or will they destroy the parliament building? Will they destroy the Salma Dam? Will they blow up the roads? I don't think so. Now, we have the interest of people of Indian origin, Hindus and the Sikhs and Christians who are vulnerable. So obviously we would like to safeguard their interests. And last but not the least, or perhaps the most important, is that Pakistan, our friendly neighbor, which has nurtured Taliban, which has given them safe haven, armed them, would want to have the Taliban train their guns at India. But that is our immediate challenge. But they will all have to come through POK, because that's the only way. Not that we cannot handle it. We have been dealing with Pakistani proxy war and terrorism for 42 years. We have in the past also blunted the Pakistani wave after wave of terror attacks. And we have the capability, but they can be deployed to create more problems. So our effort would be to talk to Taliban if and when we do. I hope they moderate themselves and we can talk to them. Is to say, look, please do not work against our interests. We will not work against yours. Not that they will completely listen to us, but if we have a line of communication with them, the mischief-making potential of Pakistan will be blunted to an extent. So that is our interest. And as I said, in case Taliban moderates itself, we should have no difficulty in talking, because A, they are in effective control, and B, talking does not mean recognition or encouragement. It basically means that we tell them that, look, you are in effective control. We recognize that. We agree to disagree with your policies, but we are willing to say, let's agree to disagree, but we are willing to talk.
Now, is that given the fact that already after the initial sort of positive sounding overtures, women in government have been told to stay at home. Various provinces, girls have been told not to go to school. So slowly but surely the entire women sort of disappearing from the scene is getting scarier and scarier. And, it doesn't look terribly different from Taliban 1.0. So, from the G7 meeting and the statement that they gave out yesterday, are you getting any kind of sense of what, if any, levers there might be to hold the Taliban to account on these issues?
Well, the leverage that the Western world has is funds. The Taliban to govern needs funds, and they will be deficient of funds. So yes, to that extent, the Afghan funds that have been frozen or further assistance, budgetary support, etc., will be of importance. But will be something which will persuade Taliban to act in a certain way? I do not think so, because they will be underwritten by Pakistan, which is bankrupt, but they will still underwrite them. China, which will dole out money, they have the narco money, they have the taxation, so they will eke it out. But certainly it will cause difficulties for the Taliban. Yet if this happens, then Taliban will behave the way they did, and it will embarrass the Western world further. So it is something like MAD, mutual assured destruction, that you either work with us or we cause complications to each other. I have a feeling that people will hum and haw and fall in line, and Taliban will, to an extent, moderate itself. But what kind of moderation? There will be no democracy. Women's liberty will be curtailed dramatically. But you remember the scenes that we saw where a hapless woman was buried half deep in a pit and then or limbs were chopped off.
Horrifying.
It's horrifying. So long as this version of Sharia, this brutal version, this violent version is not applied, I guess the world will heave a sigh of relief. But there's no doubt about it that women's right will be curtailed. But Nilova, last point here, the biggest check on the excesses of Taliban will not be the American or the Western demands, but will be something called the social media. And that is one very big difference between 2001 and 2021. Today, it will become that much more difficult for the Taliban to cover up its crimes and excesses because 70% of the Afghans have access to telephone and they are quite net savvy, social media savvy. So that will be the bigger check on the Taliban because they also want to present a face to the world which is different, if not benign, but different.
Why would they want to present a different face? I mean, how does it bother them? They're in charge. They will do exactly as they please. Why should they want to appear more favorably inclined or present this softer face to the world? I mean, how does it...
Absolutely. Very valid question. And that is because what have they learned in the wilderness? 20 years in wilderness, whom were they dependent on? They were dependent on Pakistan. Pakistan loves to play both sides. Mullah Baradar was in the Pakistani prison for 8 years. I can assure you it was not a bed of roses. Have you heard of where Habibullah Akhundzada is? Who is the third spiritual leader? There is speculation that he is in Pakistani custody. Pakistan has perfected the art of playing snakes and ladders with everybody. And there is no loss between Taliban and Pakistan. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a Talibani leader. I mean, I don't wish anybody to be in their shoes, but suppose they are. Would they want to get back to the wilderness after 5 years? Or they would want, having learned their lessons, they would want to continue with their administration. And now that they see that China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, etc. are supporting them, and they have also acquired the finesse, the skill sets to present a softer face to the world. They have understood what PR is. Would they not want to at least ease themselves from the clutches of Pakistan, if not free? So I think in their own interest and to continue to be in power, they have understood that they cannot behave the way they, hopefully, I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but hopefully they have understood that they will have to moderate their stance. They can still remain Taliban, they can still introduce Sharia. All that they have to do is to eliminate the cruelties that they inflicted on the people of Afghanistan.
Yeah, it is all said and done. At the end of the day, the people of that country are so beleaguered, and it is such a major, major tragedy for them that, people, superpowers have come and gone, and nobody is actually at the end of the day being bothered about the actual people of that country and what they want. And each time they get buffeted from one extreme to the other extreme, and it's a very sad situation. But finally, Vishnu, do you think the G7 statement gave any kind of inclination of whether they were in any hurry to maybe recognize the Taliban regime, or is that something of a holdout that can be used as a lever also?
Nilova, nothing succeeds like success. And when somebody manages to defy odds, then recognition gravitates towards them. Now that Taliban is in effective control, and Russia and China, which are two major powers, they are permanent members of the UN Security Council. China has deep pockets. China has strategic interest to see the back of the Americans. It's a matter of time. If not today, then tomorrow. I think countries will fall in line. Remember, the venerable British CDS had already said that they are country bumpkins. So cut some slack to them. I think that narrative will grow. And before long, the Western world will justify the reason to sup with the Taliban. That's how the cookie crumbles, and that is how the world behaves. The rest is good politics, good optics, but nothing more than that.
So at the end of the day, we have to sort of very cautiously wait and watch and follow what's happening and hold our cards very close to our chests. Would that be a correct assessment?
Well, I don't know how many cards we have, but yes, in diplomacy, there is a time to act, there is a time to watch, there is time to speak, there is time to be silent, and nothing is going to be known in a hurry. It could be weeks, it could be months, because we don't even know which is the real Taliban. We don't know what is they up to. There are factions in the Taliban. So wait and watch and take a decision at the right time.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Prakash.
Pleasure is all mine.
COVID-19 vaccinations fell by 80% in Afghanistan in the first week after the Taliban took over the country, according to UNICEF. The UN Children's Agency is warning that nearly 2 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine delivered to Afghanistan, about half of the total so far, expire in November. India achieved a significant milestone in its ongoing COVID-19 vaccination drive, with the total vaccination coverage crossing 60 crore mark today. Union Health Ministry has termed it as yet another achievement in its fight against COVID-19. It said that the COVID recovery rate in the country stands at 97.67%.
The Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs of India has approved the FDI proposal for an investment of up to 15,000 crore rupees by MS Anchorage Infrastructure Investment Holding Limited in a major boost to infrastructure and construction sector, including airport sector. It will also be a significant boost to the recently announced National Monetization Pipeline, as it will help fund leasing out of state-owned infrastructure assets, which involves handling assets like roads, railways, airports, sports, stadiums, power transmission lines and gas pipelines to private operators. Chief of Defence Staff of India, General Bipin Rawat, held a meeting with Commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral John C. Aquilino, in New Delhi on Wednesday. Issues related to peace and security in the region and bilateral defence cooperation were part of the agenda for the meeting. Admiral Aquilino also held meetings with the Tri-Service Chiefs and Defence Secretary Dr. Ajay Kumar. The Commander U.S. Indo-PACOM began his visit by paying tribute to the fallen heroes by laying a wreath at the National War Memorial in New Delhi. He is on an official visit to India from 24th to 26th of August.
Indian Minister of State for Home Nityanand Rai on Wednesday attended the UNESCIP Regional Conversation Series 2021 Ministerial Panel on Disaster, Climate and Health Resilience virtually. The conference was also attended by ministers from Australia, China, Indonesia, Japan, the Maldives, Papua New Guinea and Thailand. In his address, the minister said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi always believes in working in cooperation with the world. Mr. Rai said that natural disasters in the midst of the pandemic have multiplied the hardships and sufferings of people, particularly the poor and vulnerable segments. He also said that there is much to be satisfied from India's achievements in the area of disaster risk management over the last 2 decades. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Azadi Ka Safar every day with All India Radio from Monday the 16th of August. As part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, News Services Division of All India Radio brings to you the story of glorious struggle and sacrifices of freedom fighters on 100.1 FM Gold channel in the English news bulletins at 8:30 a.m., 2 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to World News. National Security Advisor of India, Mr. Ajit Doval, hosted the inaugural meeting of the IBSA National Security Advisors meet virtually. During the meeting, discussions were held on maritime security, fight against terrorism and transnational organized crime and cyber security. Participants agreed that terrorism, in particular, cross-border terrorism undertaken through state sponsorship, continues to be the most potent threat to global peace and security and must be fought through united efforts. They also agreed to enhance cooperation in intelligence sharing, exchange of best practices amongst concerned national agencies, and capacity building. The meeting was convened as part of the preparatory process for the next IBSA Summit of Leaders, which is scheduled to take place during India's chairship of IBSA. India, Brazil and South Africa are three large developing countries located in three different continents bound by common values of democracy and pluralism. They are also all maritime nations. And now a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex declined 15 points or 0.03% to close at 55,944. On the other hand, the NSE Nifty rose 10 points or 0.06% to settle at 16,635. Among global markets, Asian stock markets traded mixed and range-bound. China's Shanghai Composite surged 0.7% and South Korea's Kospi gained 0.3%. On the other hand, Japan's Nikkei 225 and Singapore's Straits Times both ended almost flat. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell marginally by 0.1%. European stocks were also mixed in intraday trade. Global crude prices witnessed modest gains. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at around $71.60 per barrel. In the forex market, the rupee weakened 5 paisa to close at 74 rupees and 24 paisa against the US dollar. Anubha Rohadki for World News, All India Radio.
Union Youth Affairs and Sports Minister Anurag Thakur has interacted with Indian athletes and medal winners of the World Under-20 Athletics Championship. Appreciating the performance of the players during the championship, Mr. Thakur said the Indian players performed well and this shows that India can do better in athletics.
हमारे खिलाड़ियों ने बहुत अच्छा प्रदर्शन किया है। अमित खत्री, शैली सिंह ने जहां एक और सिल्वर मेडल जीता और शैली सिंह का तो मात्र 1 सेंटीमीटर से गोल्ड मेडल चुका है। ये अपने आप में दिखाता है कि जहां भारत ने पहले से बहुत बेहतर प्रदर्शन किया, हमारे एथलीट्स ने और अच्छा करना शुरू किया, वहीं पर बाकी खिलाड़ियों ने भी, चाहे अब्दुल रजाक हो, भरत श्रीधर हो, प्रिया मोहन हो, सुमी हो, कपिल हो, इन सब ने ब्रॉन्ज मेडल जीते। ये एक अच्छी पहल है।
In Tokyo Paralympics in women's individual table tennis C4, India's Bhavina Ben Patel lost her first round match to China's Ying Chao 0-3. And with that, it's a wrap of Indian action at Paralympics game for the day. Bhavina Ben was up against a mighty opponent. Chao is a 5-time Paralympic gold medalist, Beijing 2008 and London 2012 individual champion, and 2008 and 2012 and 2016 team champion. Indian paddlers Bhavina Ben Patel and Sonal Ben Manubhai Patel began their campaigns with opening round defeats in their respective events at the Tokyo Paralympics on Wednesday. Competing in the women's class 3 category, Sonal Ben was ahead after the first 3 games but lost momentum to lose 11-9, 3-11, 17-15, 17-14, 4-11 against Li Xuan of China, world number 4 and Rio Paralympics silver medalist, in a tightly contested match. In cricket, on first day of the third test at Headingley in Leeds, hosts England were 114 for no loss against India when the report last came in. Earlier, after opting to bat, India were bowled out for 78 in just 40.4 overs in their first innings.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post writes that Afghans running out of money as Taliban bans taking dollars out of the country. The Wall Street Journal says that in Kabul, private rescue efforts grow desperate as time to evacuate Afghans runs out. The Washington Post reports that White House to discuss cybersecurity with top tech, energy and finance executives. Gulf Time reports that US-China accuse each other of bullying nations. The Guardian says UN criticized overstatement on overuse of antibiotics in farming. A quick look at the headlines once again. Government makes e-visa mandatory for Afghan citizens travelling to India. India to brief floor leaders of political parties on present situation in Afghanistan on Thursday. Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs approves FDI proposal of 15,000 crore rupees investment by Anchorage Infrastructure Investment Holdings Limited. India's Chief of Defence Staff Mr. Rawat holds talks with US Commander of Indo-Pacific Command on bilateral defence cooperation. Cumulative COVID-19 vaccination coverage in India crosses 60 crore mark. And in cricket, India bowled out for 78 runs by England in first innings on day 1 of third test at Leeds. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Ethiopia.
Vaishnav Jan to tene ki je piri parai jane re Vaishnav Jan to tene ki je piri parai.
And with that, we end this bulletin.